And before we get into it, we wanted to do a real flashback because we missed one more on this day story.
Oh.
So I think Rick's going to help set the scene because it's June 14th, 1970, one of the biggest moments in sports, maybe not to Americans, but for sure our European crowd. So Rick, bring us home because we want to have a little homage to what good marketing used to look like.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have our show like one of the greatest soccer players ever. And if you ever seen any, if you weren't alive during these times, if you ever seen the documentaries, I would encourage you to watch some of his play, which is unbelievable. Pele is one of the greatest soccer/football players, depending on your geography at all times. We're gonna take you back to June 14th, 1970. At the time, there was the FIFA World Cup, Brazil versus Peru. Clearly, Pele was on the Brazilian team, and Adidas was the official sport kit sponsor of the entire sport. Almost like you see like Nike on today's event, and then they're like, maybe like today they're battling with Adidas. At the time, it was Adidas and Puma. Adidas was the incumbent, had all the money and all the players and the league locked up, and Puma was the challenger. And so they decided that, how are we going to do something creative to get ourselves known and out there? And let's kind of flow through some of these slides and see sort of what happened. What you have is essentially the shoe tying that was heard around the world. What did they do? They took the best player in football history and paid him $120,000 to stage a shoe tying. Of course, it's not just shoe tying. Like, the people in the stands, they don't necessarily know what's going on. But at home, what do they do when the greatest player in the world does anything? They zoom in on it. And so they zoom in on his Puma shoes, which are, first of all, not regulation shoes. They're not Adidas. And as a result, Puma, so if you go, this is sort of the end result of it, which is like he signs his own shoes, and Puma gets huge recognition from it and publicity. He secured $120K from tying your shoes. That, to me, that's not a bad day of work. That would be equivalent to $850,000 today, which I haven't seen such a marketing stunt in some time. I think Adidas was super upset. So like, let's get on a ROAS. Like, this is like guerrilla marketing at its finest. And so I think this is a stretch, was like the balance between ROAS, which is like a very financially driven metric, like how efficient is your marketing? Are you, is your landing page efficient? Is your ad spend returning what you thought it would be? Versus sort of creativity and guerrilla tactics and word of mouth and just getting the world to notice who you are.
And taking a risk, right?
And taking a risk. So I'm going to kick off the conversation that way, and kick it over to you, Eric and Jess, for how does this factor into the state of marketing today?
You're saying just taking a risk in general and trying things out. I think it's, and we're going to get into this a lot more. The idea of companies have become so caught up in Excel sheets with their marketing that they just don't take a step back. And it's funny because I'm super data driven. We like very much performance.
You have to be.
You have to be. And I'm not saying, let's not swing the other way either, but people have forgot. And I think this is actually where the challenges in e-commerce came the past 2 years, and a lot of the challenges in brands in general the past 2 years, where they go, oh, we're not performing, and, it's probably just the economy or whatever. And they brush it off. And it's like, no, like there's a very easy stat here. Consumer discretionary spending has not declined. It's not inflation. I'm sorry, it's not. It's like, if you're a discount seller, I can guess that inflation's affecting you. But for most discretionary spending online, those aren't people that are hyper affected by inflation. And so we're seeing the stats. Deloitte just released a study in May about this, that it's actually not affecting consumer spending that much. So what happened was it got harder to track all the results of your marketing because all the tracking systems got killed by iOS 14. And so since then, everyone just kind of got way more like, we just want to see, like, if there's no result, we're not doing it. And it's like, you have to take your step back and go, my view of any business that I've built has always been, if I can't show a bunch of potential customers my company and get customers in a very profitable way, like, the problem isn't my marketing, the problem is my business.
Right.
and I think most big companies that have done well have that same approach, which is why you see them doing things like Super Bowl ads. It's like, if I can't go show millions of people my company and get a bump for it, then my company's not worth anything. So
Yeah.
I think, but to get that attention when you do things like that, you have to do these, edgy creative things.